Hatito, hello, my name is Miah Grace, this is my channel in case you don't know, and this is where I talk about nostalgic pop culture and costumes in the media. This is Kenya. I've gotten to a point where I don't redo takes whenever she comes and interrupts me anymore because she just does it all the time. Today we're going to be talking about the costumes in Monster High, but first I really want to talk about what was going on in children's media in 2010s in the fashion world, and I feel like there's a scene from Nancy Drew that sums it up the best. Nancy has recently moved to a new school and these two girls are going to help her get her style under control, right? So they take her out to the mall and they take her to a store with a styling consultant and they say, hey, we need help. And then the styling consultant goes, oh honey, you've got so many great pieces, you just need to build an outfit better. And then the joke is that, you know, she's talking to the two cool girls, but not to Nancy because Nancy's dressed in a classic and timeless vintage style because she's not like other girls. The two mean girls are dressed in a style that is just very indicative of that time. And Monster High came out right as that was starting to shift a little bit. Like, we still definitely saw a lot of color and layers happening in the Monster High girls line, but there's a thing that makes it very cohesive, especially when comparing and contrasting it with what Disney was doing at the time. Anyways, I think that children's media in America in the early 2000s was taking a little bit of inspiration from decora or Harajuku fashions, and I think that Monster High especially did this, which honestly all of fashion was taking a little bit of an inspiration from Harajuku at different points in the late 2000s because Harajuku was awesome. It's worth being inspired by. It's really interesting to me to see how people will look at the same idea, like decora, and then span out from that with so many different interpretations and ideas and styles. Always thought that was fascinating. But the way that children's media manifested this idea and inspiration into borderline clown costumes for all of their characters is egregious. And JoJo Siwa is like the natural peak of this trend. I will not be taking questions at this time. I will be talking about Shake It Up next week because I was gonna do that now, but then the segment spun out into like a 5-page long script of its own, so stay tuned if you wanna. But let's talk about Monster High. I was way too old and way too edgy to watch Monster High whenever it first came out. I was a mask-presenting, self-loathing teenager in a Christian metal band that had been taught and conditioned to be completely ashamed of anything traditionally feminine or girly that I liked, unless it was homemaking, that was allowed. And for a myriad of reasons, I saw myself as monstrous and unlovable. So when Monster High came out, I immediately resonated with every single part of it, and I had to engage with it. I just had to. I watched all of the episodes with my infant niece who, it all went right over her head, I'm sure, but I would sit there with the boppy and hold her and rock her and watch Monster High, and I bought her the dolls for Christmas and her birthday because, you know, what better to buy for a literal baby than a $20 doll with tiny moving parts that she could rip off and choke on. My favorite of all the Monster High dolls is actually Laguna Blue. I did like a repaint of her when I was a little baby teeny bopper, and I turned her into my imaginary friend from when I was a kid. But enough self-serving nostalgia. We're here to talk about the freaking clothes. These ghouls walked so that e-girls could run. You've got twee influence, you've got hipster chic, that was what was happening at the time, so of course it's there. There are kawaii elements, of course. There's a lot of Lolita elements, but not in like a standard structured Lolita Bible approved way. And every single one of the ghouls has a cohesive style that changes with each one of the doll releases and each season of the show that they put out, which I freaking loved. Still do, honestly. But what made their loud, sugar-coated style work? The 3-color rule. It's not really a rule so much as a guideline though. We'll get to that. It's often said in both costume and character design that you want to have a color story of at least like 3 colors. And the 3 colors part is very much open to interpretation, and we'll see how that gets used a little bit in a moment. But essentially, if you're going to be having a character running through a story, you want to have one color that sort of identifies them, especially in theater, because face blindness with bright lights is a real thing. Do not count on people being able to recognize your character just by a little tiny blip in the distance, they're not going to. So you want to have colors that remain consistent for each character. And with cartoons or little shows where kids are going to be watching it, that also makes them more recognizable and identifiable for merch lines or for toy drops. So obviously Monster High has given all of the characters at least one color that stays consistent through their whole story. And speaking of the 3 colors not being set in stone, sometimes you'll see 3 colors and a neutral, or 3 colors and a metallic, and sometimes you'll see 4 colors but 2 of them are very similar. Sometimes the 3 colors will be like various shades of each other. Sometimes black and white are counted as a color, sometimes they're not. It's really more of an art than a science, because it's literally art. So that's why I don't like it when people call it the 3-color rule. It's really more of a guideline. But let's look at some dolls. Frankie always has a muted moss color that shows up in her skin as a pastel and usually in her clothing as well. And she's always going to have a neon pink color as well, and sometimes it's a faded pink, and she's always going to have sparks of yellow. And there's always going to be metallic silver there on her stitches and her little bolts. And sometimes there's black and white to fill in the gaps. It's a really full palette, especially when we consider the 3-color guideline. You might even argue that it doesn't fall into the 3-color guideline. I definitely think that it does, but it's open to interpretation. But this full color palette tells us 2 things about Frankie. First, that she's fun, she's colorful, and she's got a lot going on with her personality. She's only 115 days old, she's figuring herself out, and the whole world is new and wonderful to her, and she just wants to try everything. She doesn't have herself nailed down yet, so to speak. She's learning new hobbies. She's wearing all of the shades of pink, you know? The other thing that it tells us about her is it denotes her as the main character. Because she's got the most going on, your eye is naturally going to be drawn to her in most scenes. Now, conversely from Frankie Stein, but in that same trio, we have Draculora. She has a much more muted color scheme. She is pink, 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 and pink. Now, you might want to call it pink, black, and white, but the pinks are very inconsistent, and we see a lot of different shades, and they do a really good job playing with them. So I really want to recognize that there's a lot of different pinks happening, and she doesn't just have one signature pink. I do tend to associate her with like a bordering on pastel dusty pink color, but we associate the baby pink colors with being girly and feminine in a traditional sense, and Draculora definitely falls into an almost like Barbie personality type. She's bubbly, she's kind, she's caring, she cares about everyone around her, she cares about even the normies so much that she's become a vegan and she doesn't touch human blood, which I think is a fun character detail. I've always loved that about her. But when we consider her against Frankie Stein, her age and her color palette kind of gives us a little bit of a clue that she's had time to figure herself out. Going back to her veganism, she comes from a long line of very prestigious vampires. Her father is literally Dracula, hence Draculora, and she has flown in the face of him and decided that she is not going to consume blood. You know, that's a very hard stance that she's taken. She's also dating someone who is not a vampire, which is also, you know, potentially going to upset your parent. She knows exactly who she is. She has all of her beliefs pretty well rooted, and she's just a very stable character, right? That doesn't mean that she doesn't still learn some lessons along the way, because she does, and she does have some heartbreak as well, but she's very consistent. Not one note, but consistent, solid. And her color scheme of pink and pink and pink and black and white really fills that in. She's literally a vegetarian vampire in a relationship with a werewolf who happens to be her best friend's brother. That conversation had to be awkward as heck, but 15,000 years will give you a heck of a sense of your own identity. Speaking of Draculora's bestie, we've got to talk about Claudeen. Her brown gets to be a neutral and mixing in really vivid taupey colors. This character is black coated, in case you couldn't tell. And another one of the ways I really love that they make that black coating very obvious visually is that they use funk influences in her fashion. They give her textured hair. No, Mama can't play right now. Mama can hold the book, it's fine. But this fashion and the color palette really solidifies that her character is supposed to be seen as both. This both solidifies that her character is supposed to be fashionable and black coated, so that there is absolutely no room for questioning. Technically any of the characters in Monster High could be considered black coated though, because none of them are really white per se. Because with the colored skin, they kind of leave it up to interpretation. Some of them are more muted pale colors, but it makes it really easy to see yourself in the roles of the monsters. Back to Claudeen's color scheme. The purple that they give her tends to be paired with orange or green, which again, it's a very 1970s funk palette and vibe, and it's just perfection. Oh wait. I'm just now putting this together. Claudeen's character is basically just Raven Simone, but as a werewolf. They're fashionistas, they're black, they have 70s influence in their style. How did I not see this before? One thing that makes me absolutely respect the heck out of the outfits in Monster High is the way that the function is integrated into them, right? Because there's a lot of monsters in the lore who are either mermaids and have to use a wheelchair so that they can access on land activities, and so, you know, their wheelchair is part of their outfit, right? But then there's also characters that have things like wings or extra arms and things like that that need to be accommodated. Someone in extra arms is not necessarily going to be wearing like a sweater. They're probably going to be wearing a tank top that they can fit all their arms through. But it's really nice because you can see that they put thought into the clothing and what would be accessible for the different body styles. Notice I said styles and not body types. They're all very, very skinny characters. Gil and Laguna Blue tend to have outfits that are the most obviously put together to accommodate a monstrous body type. Gil literally has to wear a suit that keeps fresh water on his skin, except for the times when he doesn't have to do that, but you know, that's a continuity error. And we see Laguna also, you know, her little purse is a fishbowl, so she can bring her fish friend with her places, which is just, it's so cute. It's cute. We love to see reasonable accommodation. But this focus on functionality really shows. We don't see a lot of awkward layers that don't make any sense. We don't see a lot of design details for no reason whatsoever. It's cohesive. I never look at a Monster High character and look at their clothing and think, what in the heck are they wearing that for? It adds to their story and it adds to their characterization, always. You'll see what bad functionality in clothing looks like next week when I talk about Shake It Off, and by talk about, I unfortunately mean rant about. Anyway, the functionality of the clothing is already there because they've considered the way that these monsters would have to adapt their lives to coexist with each other, and that shows in their clothing and their fashion, as well as the set design of the show, but that's beside the point. And it's clear that this approach of having a really, really good design and hoping that people notice you worked, because it has been 10 years and I'm still here talking about it. People are constantly taking fashion inspiration from Monster High. I mentioned the E-Kids already, I think. Why is this? Because Freaky just got fabulous. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. Well, like I said, this week we're gonna look at the other side of this coin, and I'm gonna be talking about the fashion on Shake It Up because it's around the same era. There's a lot of the same principles in demographic, but they just, it's very different. It's very different. I'm obviously very biased, you know, so take that with you when you go into it. There is a large Winx Club project on the way that I have not forgotten about. It's very involved and in-depth, and technically 2 projects, so you'll see it when you see it. I'm also going to be doing more costume design plots. If there are any shows that you would like to see me design a costume run for a hypothetical live action adaptation, let me know in the comments. I love to see y'all's suggestions and things like that. It's really genuinely very fun for me. Like I said, there's a bunch of fun stuff in the works, so be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. I also might make a video talking with my YouTuber friends about which Monster High dolls they would be. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a like so that more awesome people like you can see it. And if you would like to super support the channel, my Ko-fi links are always in the description box below. I use the Ko-fi donations to keep the lights on, so to speak. And currently I have a goal of breaking even on my expenses for the past year over the 2 channels that I run and the small indie pattern drafting business that I do. Whether you are shaped like a Monster High doll or a Mr. Potato Head, we have sewing patterns that will fit you. You shouldn't have to do a full bust adjustment the first time you sew something. That is my mission statement with the pattern company. Anyways, it's been awesome talking to you. I've been Miah Grace. Hope to see you in the next one. finally remembered to wear the gloves. I'm so happy. I don't remember the theme song. I'm pretty sure the theme song was just monster, monster high, monster high, monster, monster high. That's kind of lame. No, there was like a rap in there that's like, Draculora's got me stealing my heart. Frankie, you got me falling apart. Something like that. Hide the bass. I know, Mama's sorry. Don't step on the laptop. Don't step on the laptop. Puppy, puppy, go away. Go, go. Can you go lay down? Just give me the bone and I'll throw it and you leave me alone, right? That's not true. You'll just bring it back. Okay. Where even was I? And the 1970s fashion influence. Okay, you're making too many tappy noises. You're being too loud, dude. I love you. Please stop. Please stop. I need to do this. I love you so much. Just give me like 5 minutes, okay? Hi, puppy. You're so good. What did I ever do to deserve you? What did I do to deserve such a happy puppy? Don't drink my juice. I see you. No. We've talked about this. Paws off the brand. Paws off the brand. I gotta get getting the good scritches.